My name is Abena Engmann, and I'm very excited to be celebrating the 2022 Leadership Week with you. And I'll be sharing something on nuggets on building trustworthy leadership. But before we do, let's break down what we mean by transformation and what we mean by trust. Transformation means changed, a marked change in form, nature, or appearance. It's usually significantly different from what we usually know, and the change is usually radical or dramatic. What is trust? Trust is a firm belief in the reliability or ability of someone or something. Let's take some examples. Usually when you want to change your position from standing to sitting, you have a firm belief in the chair that you are going to sit on because you know the chair will hold you once you sit on it. Another example, when you want to change your destination, let's say from Ghana to America, you have a firm belief that the aircraft will take you safely from Ghana to America. You don't even think twice about it. In the same way, if we as leaders want transformation, we want change, we want a marked change in form or nature and appearance, we need to be able to build that trust. So, I will be sharing a few key lessons from a book I chose. The book is really intriguing. It's a story about a colony of penguins who needed to change their habitat because it had become endangered. Before I proceed to sharing the nuggets, I would play a video that summarizes the book. And I encourage all of us to grab a copy to read. It's an easy book to read and has a lot of valuable lessons, but I'll just be picking a few lessons from it. Let's enjoy the story and I'll come back with the nuggets I have indicated to share.
Hi everyone, today we are talking about nuggets for building a trustworthy leadership using the lessons from a book I have chosen. So this book starts by talking about penguins who are living in their own colony on an iceberg in Antarctica. And they've been living there for their whole life. So it's the home of their fathers, their forefathers, and will always be like that, except that one penguin called Fred. A very curious, level-headed, and creative penguin, as the book described him, is noticing that there are large cracks in their iceberg. And water is collecting in these cracks. And when this water freezes in the winter, it will expand and break the iceberg. And if this should happen, especially in the winter, many young and old penguins will die. So Fred got worried and knew he had to do something, but he was in no position to make any pronouncements or dictate how others should act. Then he thinks to himself, what can I do? He decides to talk to Alice, a senior penguin and a member of the leadership council, who's very practical and no nonsense and always gives good advice about the danger. But before Alice and Fred go forward, they decide to do a little experiment, where they put water in a bottle, seal it, and leave it inside the iceberg. If their theory is correct, the water will freeze, expand, and the bottle would have broken. And unfortunately, that was what happened. And they realized that their nightmare could come true. Then Alice led Fred to the leadership council to tell them about his discovery. But some of the penguins panicked. Others were skeptical, some even wanted to keep it a secret after listening to Fred. However, when they do realize that this could be a dangerous situation, they finally decided that they need to do something. And so they pulled together a guiding team, where the guiding team comprised of Louise, who is the head of the leadership council, Alice, Fred, Buddy, and a professor, and they had to come together to think of a solution. So while most of them were respectable and practical, there was one member called Nono, who was supposed to be responsible for weather forecasts, and was also accustomed to being blamed for being wrong. But Nono didn't see the need for something to be done, and was skeptical about the operation. But that's the only time the team realized that things could change, and they need another perspective. So, they went forward to see the cracks and the melting ice with Fred. And while they were devastated and wondering what to do, they saw a seagull flying. And the penguins think to themselves, the seagull looks lost. But it doesn't seem afraid. Is it that moving from one place to another is the way it lives? And that's when they developed a vision of find a new strategy to live. The leaders needed to communicate this to the entire community. So they called an assembly, but Lewis asked Buddy to speak to the assembly about the problem, since he was loved by the people. Unfortunately, not everyone understood the problem at that time, so the leadership found innovative ways to communicate for most of them to appreciate the need for change. Most of the penguins then had a better understanding of what is at stake, and agreed to help as scouts, to search for a new and safer iceberg for the colony. The team continued to empower others to act, encourage the scouts to keep pressing forward, and not give up. And a perfect iceberg was found, and they moved to the new home. Their new home was different. The best fishing grounds were in unfamiliar places, but the problems were not as large as the anxious birds had feared. There were many times that there were setbacks, and people were trying to get in their way, or disturb the system. But somehow, everybody was convinced that work needs to be done. So they created a new culture, which was nomadic. And every season they looked for new icebergs. But the preparation was not as dramatic as looking for the first one.
So the book is entitled Our Iceberg is Melting, and it's about changing and succeeding under any conditions. And it was written by John Cotter and Holger Rathberger. Please grab a copy of this book once we are done and enjoy the many other lessons that I will not be able to share in this short video. I hope you enjoyed the video. In the summary, the penguins said that this was always going to be their home, meaning change was not something that they were going to do. It was not something that they had thought about. But effecting change, changing their current home, was not going to be an easy task. Sometimes change is just inevitable. To experience growth, change is vital. So how can we ensure that we are able to get people to change so that they can grow? So what are the nuggets that I want to share with you today? As a leader, 1, you will not be the one who sees the need for change. Remember, others on your team can also recognize the need for change. Back to the penguin story. Fred was definitely not a leader. And he was not somebody who was liked in the community. He was nowhere near leadership, and the community did not even recognize him. But he was the one who actually recognized the need for change. So, as a leader, first thing that you need to do is to pay attention to others in your team when they speak, because as a leader, you may be missing something very important. If you listen to them, it will make it easier for them to listen to you. That is the first nugget I will share with you. Recognize other people in your team who may see the need for change. The second nugget I would like to share with you, my fellow leaders, is that you need to empower others on your team to act. In the story, Alice and Lewis didn't speak, even though they were leaders, when they wanted to communicate the problem to the rest of the community. Remember that delegation is a very powerful tool for earning or building trust, because the people will recognize that you trust them, and that trust will be reciprocated. So that is nugget number 2. Nugget number 3, you need to recognize the different people on your team. You have different people with different characters, different attitudes, different skills. So use them to help you to achieve that change. You cannot do it alone as a leader, because as a leader, you are only as good as your team. So recognize the different people on your team. The next nugget we'll talk about is that without the people, who are you leading? So when you are developing the transformation or change plan, do it with the people, because without the people, there's nobody that you are leading, or there's nothing that you are leading. So make sure everyone, or at least majority, understands you. And that is where communication for understanding is very important. And that is my next nugget. Make sure you communicate in such a way that majority, everybody may not understand, but get the majority on board. Understanding brings trust. Find different ways to communicate the change that needs to happen. Someone will understand before others. Those who get the understanding early will pull along the others who do not understand. Make sure that you communicate, because once you communicate and everyone understands, you would have people tagging along to get you to that change. The next nugget is that you need to put together a guiding team. Everybody cannot lead, but you cannot also do it alone. So recognize people on your team, form that team to lead the transformation. Brainstorm, explore with the team different solutions that you can bring on board. So these are the 6 nuggets I'll share with you. But remember that transformation is very important. It is important because change is vital for growth. And it is easier to implement the next change if the first change was done with the people. So if you do the first change with the people, the next change will be easier to do. 3 important things to remember. Don't do it alone. Build a team. It is called co-creation. The second thing I would like you to remember as a leader, be prepared, because some people may not see the need for change at all. Not everyone will be on board, but remember, change is vital for transformation and for growth. The last one, transformation, change, it needs relationship building, it needs patience, it needs good communication, and change is very emotional. I wish us all a happy celebration week. Thank you.